Constitution says is that at the Court of Appeal, it is the President of the Court of Appeal that will empanel the tribunal, that will determine the persons who are to sit in the panel that is going to hear the petition. I expect about 5 justices traditionally will sit over such matters. At the Court of Appeal, they sit in panels of 3 and 5. 3 for regular cases, 5 for certain special cases, including presidential petitions and matters of serious constitutional significance. Now, it is the President of the Court of Appeal that will empanel them, that will select from his brother justices, those who should form part of the panel that will hear the petition. What I know they do is that when the members of the panel are selected by the President of the Court of Appeal, I don't know whether the President himself will be part of that panel. So in the panel, they have what is called the presiding justice, right? And when they are done with the hearing, they will have a lead judgment and possibly dissenting judgment. Now, the justice who presides is typically the most senior, because the legal system, the legal profession is based on seniority and hierarchy, right? So when the panel is set up, the 5 justices are selected. They based on the preference of the President of the Court of Appeal. Unlike the US, where the courts, the American system, where the courts have ideological leaning. For example, you have the conservative justices, you have the liberal justices. In Nigeria, we don't have that. We don't really have that, really. Of course, we as lawyers in practice, we know that some justices have, certain leanings and certain disposition to, that are different, but it is not so obvious. It is not so obvious, because you could find, for example, one justice reading the lead judgment in a particular case, and in a different case that have the same characteristics, the same justice may be the one to read the lead judgment that differs from the earlier decision. So we don't really have that strict ideological leaning. We don't have an ideological leaning in our courts. That is not to say that the justices do not have their own preferences or their own disposition to matters. I don't want to be too direct about it, but within the courts, they have their own way of looking at matters. There are some justices that are deemed to be a bit more liberal. There are some that are known to be a bit more conservative. But the liberal and conservative character here is not the American type, right? Mm-hmm. Their ideological leaning is not based on, if you file a case that is based on same-sex marriage, or you file a case that is based on the right to vote, or affirmative action, or death sentence, or what have you, you are so certain that this is how this justice is going to rule. No, we don't have that ideology on subject matter. But some justices are, over time, known to take certain approaches to their matters. So when the President of the Court of Appeal sets up that panel, I suspect they will be drawn from different parts of the country, the justices. It's not just justices in the Abuja division. As a matter of fact, even the tribunal itself, I can confirm to you, the registry of the Presidential Election Tribunal, the court officials that are part of that registry, most of them don't even work in the headquarters of the Court of Appeal. I have confirmed that. They were drawn from different divisions within the country, so that also leads to some inaccessibility by people who may want to easily reach out to them. So when they have heard the evidence, they will have what is called a conference, right? It is at that conference that they will discuss the case, the evidence that were adduced, presented before them, and then possibly take a vote, right? And then from there, they will know where each justice stands on the matter. When they have taken the vote, they see the position of the majority. If the majority says that the election should be nullified, right? Now, because the majority here has to be 3, the dissent has to be 2. That is why the number is odd. It is not even. Even at the Supreme Court, you will have 7. You don't have 6. So that in the event of a tie, there can be no tie. It is either you have 3-2, 4-1, right, or 5/5. Either 5/5, 4/1, or 3-2. Those are the scenarios at the Court of Appeal. When they have now taken that division, if the majority says the election should be nullified, if 3 or 4, or the whole of them say the election should be nullified, they will now choose from among the majority who should write the lead judgment. When the draft of the lead judgment is written, it will now be circulated to all the justices. For what? For what is called a concurrent judgment, right? By law, every justice, every member of the panel is entitled to write his own separate judgment. But there is what is called a leading judgment. That leading judgment is the authoritative position of the court. The concurrent judgment basically solidifies the leading judgment. Now, that leading judgment will also be given to those that are dissenting. And those that are dissenting will now write their own dissenting judgment to say, we have had a preview of reading the draft of the lead judgment read by my brother justice. I do not agree for reasons so and so. All that is going to be pronounced openly, publicly. Everybody will know where his justice stood. Even when the other scenario is that when in the lead, all of them don't need to write lengthy opinions. They could just simply affirm, I have had the privilege of reading the draft of the judgment. The lead judgment just read my brother justice so and so, justice so and so. I agree entirely with the judgment and I abide by the orders made. That is his position. That is his position. So they will all express an opinion either in detail or basically by accepting what the lead judgment has said, or that is going to be what is going to happen. So everybody will know where they stand. So the question of who is going to influence the membership of the panel, that is a division constitutionally that can only be taken by the heads of courts. And this is not restricted to election petition. It is so in all cases. Even at the high courts, at the federal high courts, right? It is the head of courts, the head of court that basically assigns the cases. At the division, they have what is called the administrative judge, the admin judge, that assigns cases to judges. And at the national level, where you have the chief judge of the federal high court, like in Abuja, that assigns cases, but they usually delegate that power to their second. At the Court of Appeal, at the division, you have the presiding justice in each of the division. At the headquarters, you have the PCJ. You have the president of the Court of Appeal. At the Supreme Court, when the appeal now goes to the Supreme Court, that is when the CJN comes into play. That is the one that really counts, eventually. It is the 7 wise men of the Supreme Court that will determine the fate of this election. One of the things we should push for is to have all justices sit on presidential petition. I don't like the idea of having a panel in a matter that has to do with the fate of the country. We should have the American system we can start with a presidential petition. We cannot have that in all cases because the courts are congested. As I speak to you, you can Google this report by the Punch, Supreme Court of Death cases. Supreme Court of Nigeria, as I speak to you, still has cases that were filed in the 80s before them that they have not determined. It is that bad. Save for these political matters that have a time frame. They are overworked, they are few. If you see the pressure on them, you will understand how difficult it is for them to even arrive at a decision. So you have a situation where they have to sit in panels. But I advocate that for political matters, especially presidential petitions, and possibly governorship appeals coming before them, every justice of the Supreme Court, the Constitution currently says 21. We barely have up to 18. We don't even have a full court now. Every justice of the Supreme Court should be part of it. There should be no process of saying this is who should sit, this is who should not be. Every single one of them should be part of the panel. But until the law changes, you will have 7 justices.
Okay.
You chosen by the CJN. And the same process of having conference, writing lead judgment and dissenting judgment, if any, will also be applicable.